Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Joining me, as always, the Prince of Twitter, the Regent of RedState.com, Andrew Malcolm at AHMalcolm on X.com or Twitter, or whatever you want to call it. And, of course, RedState.com. He's in the VIP section over there. Andrew, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here. As always, it's not a week without us talking.
Yeah, it looks like you're on Nob Hill, too. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I had a tech problem last week that you helped me get out of. And while I was in there, it said, "Oh, you want a background?" So I said, "Yeah, sure." And now I don't remember how to get there.
You're good. Don't worry about it.
I did live there for a couple of years, so
yeah. So why not? And it's a beautiful picture. It's a great backdrop. I'm good.
Yeah.
No worries. So I'll tell you, I'll tell a little secret about this is that the first time when I moved down here, the first time I did the Hugh Hewitt show, I had a green screen. I didn't use quite the same technology. I used an actual green screen and put a picture of the Alamo behind me. I got a call from the home office and they said, Ed, what the hell was that? It's a picture of the Alamo. I'm in Texas. They said, just clean up your office. We don't do green screens here. But that's for the Salem radio side. I could do it myself here, and I didn't even really clean up my office. I just kind of set it up behind me in a messy sort of way that I like.
And everyone, all our regulars can see, and when there's something out of place, they can remind you.
This is true. Yeah, I've even got John Andrasik's shopping cart behind me. That's my favorite piece of swag. It's even better than the shirt than the cap he bought me, which is also sitting up back there. All right, so lots of stuff going on. We just got over the No Kings weekend, the No Kings protest weekend. And got to talk a little bit about the media coverage of this because it's really a non sequitur. They're not sore that that Trump is king. They're sore that Trump won the election and that he's doing what he said he was going to do during the election, using presidential authority to do it. And one of the things that supposedly they're talking about is the deployment of the National Guard. And today, just before we started recording this, I was rushing to finish up a post about this. The Ninth Circuit of all circuits ruled for the second time in 4 months that Donald Trump has the authority to send the National Guard out to protect federal buildings and federal law enforcement agents, and that there's a long historical background going back to the original No Kings, faction. George Washington did it. He's called out the militia against the Whiskey Rebellion and the Fries Rebellion. I think Adams was the Fries Rebellion. And the Shays Rebellion, to restore order and to allow federal authority to be reestablished in a proportionate manner, right? They didn't declare war and seize the entire state. They just sent federal troops or militia troops in to deal with the rebels. And I think in the Whiskey Rebellion, they actually were able to just negotiate their way out of it, if I recall correctly. But this whole No Kings thing, no shade being thrown at my fellow boomers, which I don't like to associate with anyway, because I'm on the cusp of the near end of the boomer thing. But this really looked like the last hurrah of the hippies.
Yeah.
These were not young people for the most part that were out there. These were the Ben and Jerry's, Ben and Jerry's generation.
Ben and Jerry's, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a Ben and Jerry's, and they dressed like it, and they had the free time to do it.
It's great being on Social Security.
Yeah, and what intrigued me, it was pretty savvy communications, was that instead of fighting it, the White House posted obviously mock photos of both Trump and Vance wearing crowns, go along with it. which is the classic when someone's teasing you. If you fight it, it makes it worse. If you go along with it, it's over because it's no fun to tease. And that's basically what they were doing. They were angry, but it still was a tease.
Yeah, this is, I mean, you're right. It's a tease. The whole thing was a tease. And it wasn't even a particularly difficult tease. I mean, you know, Trump went on Blue Sky. I don't know if you saw that. This is the progressive left social media platform, right? Blue Sky. This is where all the progs fled from Twitter after Elon Musk bought it up and decided that they were going to have free speech over there, and then started banning everybody that disagreed with them. So the White House launched a Blue Sky account specifically to troll them for No Kings Weekend. No, this is a guy who doesn't run away from a fight. He just doesn't.
Yeah, that's cool. That's I didn't know about that. Yeah. Well, it's very savvy. And I mean, Ronald Reagan was very savvy about the media, having been movie star and TV host, and Trump is the same. I think Trump is more of an edge than Reagan did, but it's very effective in an age of television. You know, we didn't used to have presidents who were savvy. If you were picking a president on image, you wouldn't have picked FDR in a wheelchair or Harry Truman. Or these are not attractive guys, but television changed things starting right around 1950, 52.
Right.
And then 10 years later, we got John Kennedy, who was very photogenic, and he picked the vice president who wasn't, but he was from Texas and he wanted Texas, so he got it.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think that what's the interesting part about the only interesting part about the No Kings thing, other than just I don't know, did you see George Conway? I did have some fun with this because this was Saturday, right? And I'm doing my final word on Saturday, and I this clip of George Conway. And George Conway, of course, is the former husband of Kellyanne Conway, who was Donald Trump's first campaign manager in 2016. Or at least the campaign manager that helped him win the election. I think he had somebody else, and he brought her in after he first launched it. And they famously disagreed on Trump to the point where it really ended their marriage, which is unfortunate. But George Conway's out there trying to get a chant started up. He has a T-shirt on that says "I am Antifa," which is not going to age well once the FBI starts unraveling. And he's out there with the megaphone. He's trying to do the "hey, hey, ho, ho" thing. Or "hey, hey, what do you say?" Again, leftover. How did I put it? The same dumbasses saying the same dumbass chants from the dumbass 1960s. Because this is the reason there's nothing new to this. This is the same old leftist drivel, shrieking about the same stuff the same unreality that they're trying to sell to everybody. There's no kings here.
Yeah,
it's just a president who got elected.
Yeah, they're floundering. I wrote a couple of weeks ago in a column that the Democrat Party was caught in a tar pit, and they haven't figured out after the Biden cover up and the Biden quitting and the Kamala loss, and not a single person has apologized or admitted that it was wrong and dumb and dangerous. They're stuck in this morass, and they don't know how to get out of it. Usually by now, a losing presidential party would have figured out and gone a new way. But They haven't. They're stubbornly sticking with what got them stuck. And
you're right.
Yeah, and time is running out to pick candidates and new themes and practice stump speeches for the midterms. It's just less than 13 months away.
And the reason why this is interesting, I'll throw in real quickly about the media coverage of this. I saw this, millions of people turn out. And I was just asked about this by Drew Mariani. He's a friend of mine, and I fill in for him on Relevant Radio. I was a guest today. And he said, well, what do you think about the turnout? It was a significant turnout. I said, if you have 10,000 of these protests in 10,000 cities, right? And you have 1,000 people show up to each one of them, then you've got 1 million people. I wouldn't call any of that necessarily significant. Now, in larger cities, there were a lot more people than 1,000. I think Washington, D.C. and New York had fairly significant turnouts, but it's Washington, D.C. and New York, those are not, that's not Trump country in either one of those two places. And in both cases, it was very weirdly, there was a clock in time and a clock out time. And I think it was more obvious in New York than it may have been in Washington, D.C. It was like at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. I forget which one it was. Everybody just left and went home. Oh, we got paid for 4 hours. Okay, my shift's over.
Yeah. Yeah, it was rather perfunctory. It was sort of I don't know that it's a last gasp, but it was the sort of last gasp protest, collecting people who against Trump, and probably some who were paid to be against Trump. And they're still angry that they lost. They're even angrier that Trump is being so successful and so active. And this time, so much more savvy in how he does things, and ending, at least for now, the Gaza fighting. There's a lot to be unhappy about if you have TDS, but it doesn't matter, and they do it on the weekends because there's not so much news to compete with. So they kind of get the Sunday morning news shows. They get free access to that. And you know who learned that? FDR. FDR learned the value of making news on the weekend because there was nothing else happening. And so he saved most of his major announcements for Sunday. And then he just totally dominated the news on Monday. Now, in those days, it was just radio and newspapers. But he got all the front page headlines. And of course, once it's the story of the week, then the rest of the week is, well, what do you think about this? And how do you agree and don't agree? And he dominated the media simply by timing things on the weekend. So that's what they tried to do with this. With these demonstrations. And of course, the media, well, it didn't have anything else, but they also agreed they don't like Trump, so they went with it. And like you said earlier, none of it really seemed to matter much.
Well, I mean, they did have other things to cover, right? It could have covered the non-war in Gaza. And that was actually the subject of your Thursday column, the Dem dilemma that Nazi Trump brings peace to Israel. Worst Hitler ever. He's protecting the Jews. That's
worst Hitler ever. That would have been a better headline.
Well, I wish I could say I would. I've seen other people use various permutations of that, so it wouldn't have been original to me anyway. But
worst Hitler ever.
Worst Hitler ever.
I like that. Oh, darn. Oh.
So yeah, I mean, it's not as if they didn't have anything else to cover, but I mean, my point being is that you might have gotten 2 or 3 million people out if you count up everybody that went to a street corner. I mean, I'm here in Central Texas, and this is not a large city, and there was a No Kings protest here. Probably got a couple hundred people out there, and that's fine. I think it's great to demonstrate. I love demonstrations because it's a great, healthy way to keep everybody feeling like they're engaged. But the idea that you're going to go out there and chant, 60-year-old chants, and somehow change the world is.
That's right. I was cannon fodder back in the late 60s. I was repertorial cannon fodder for the Metropolitan Desk in New York. So they sent me to things that they didn't really care about, but they could say, "Oh, we've got a man there." and there were a lot of war protests to not pay attention to. But anyway, they sent me to a war protest on the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral. And it was raining, and there were more reporters than protesters. And, I wanted to do a story about that, and they said, "No, there's no story." Well, that shows how things have changed, because
it's not a story.
No, it's not a story that they were protesting. The story then becomes it was a flop because there were more people trying to cover it. In New York, one time, one of my early assignments was a news conference. And, I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't know, but there was like 7 or 8 TV cameras, big in those days, big TV cameras sitting on tripods all across the back of the room. And some attorney, district attorney or somebody was making an announcement, and I was trying to see through the cameras. And one of the cameramen kicked a leg of the pilot of another cameraman, and they exchanged words, and then they started, the camera fell over, and they started actually fighting fisticuffs. And all the cameras that were there for the district attorney all turned, and they're covering themselves having a fight on the floor. That wasn't a story either, but it provided a fun memory. I said to myself, I've got to remember this to use on a podcast with Ed Morrissey 65 years from now.
Yeah, there you go. It wasn't 65 years, I hope, but yeah.
Well, what, 69? What is that? 30?
56 years. 56 years. In 56 years, I'm going to need this anecdote.
I'm going to need this anecdote, right? Exactly. What a crock.
But, but I mean, this is a crock. I mean, this is a, I don't even want to say it's a last gasp. I think it's just sort of like it's almost like a box. To me, it was almost like a box checking exercise. They needed to do this. They're going to spend money. They're going to try to raise, funds, I guess, probably through it as well. And they're going to try to get signups for their various activist groups. But the truth is that this is a demonstration of the irrelevance of this particular argument. And
yeah. I know, it's so funny. And George Soros probably spent thousands of dollars hiring people to organize
millions of dollars. Yeah, there's different accounting that's going on there. But yes, I mean the whole thing is just it's
exactly, and it looks like they're dominating this whole podcast. So
they are. So let's move on.
Let's move on. Yeah.
So let's move on. So let's talk a little bit about because we got a little bit of time. We should be talking about something that's much more relevant to America today, which was that time that Russia invaded Crimea and we ended up getting Alaska, because that's very recent. I hadn't seen this in the Protection Racket Media yet.
No, you haven't. I was doing some research for a column, and I came upon the reality that back in the 1850s, Imperial Russia saw the beginning decay of the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire at the time owned Crimea. So the Russians invaded. Now, see if this sounds familiar, Ed. The Russians invaded Crimea to try to take it over, and Britain and France saw that as the first step of Russia trying to take over Europe. So they joined in the Crimean War, and the three powers, plus I guess Sardinia had an army at the time. They joined in. Yeah, and they joined in, and everybody thumped Russia, thumped the Tsar. So there were a lot of bills, and in Russia, and they were trying to figure out, well, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? And they said, well, let's maybe we could sell Alaska. Now the thinking for that was very smart, very savvy, because Alaska, which at the time they called Siberia's Siberia, Alaska was a frozen wasteland as far as they knew. It had only under 1,000 Russian settlers and Orthodox priests. And they knew that Britain, of course, had Canada as a colony. Britain had just helped to defeat Russia in Crimea. So Britain could have taken over Alaska for nothing. And the United States was just out of its Civil War, 1865, and it could have had one of the largest militaries in the world. They could have taken Alaska, and Russia would have had nothing. So they said, well, why don't we try to sell it? Well, it didn't work in the late 1850s because the president wasn't interested. However, in the mid 1860s, they came upon William Seward, who was, I was going to say Trump, who was President Lincoln's and then President Johnson's Secretary of State. And he believed in manifest destiny. He also believed that America someday would become a Pacific power. And so in 1867, he did two major things. He bought Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million, which today works out to be a little over $1 billion in modern money, which is still a bargain when you consider the billions of barrels of oil that we now know are sitting underneath Alaska.
Exactly, yeah.
So he bought Russia.
Not to mention the strategic implications of having Alaska.
Exactly. And the natural gas. And then eventually they discovered gold there too, and silver, like in the Yukon. And but in that same year, he did something else that was historic. He annexed Midway Island in the middle of the Pacific. Midway Island. Now, it was just a tiny island. Actually, the president refueled there on his way to Asia not too long ago. But it's in the middle of nowhere. However, that would turn out to be 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the perfect ambush site for the now assembled American fleet to take out, I think it was 3 Japanese carriers, and Japan in the Battle of Midway. And Japan never recovered from that. It was downhill from then on. So they had a base the U.S. had a base in Midway. The code breakers, I love this stuff, history stuff. The code breakers were breaking into Japanese codes, and they would know as the Brits broke into the German code with the Enigma machine, but they weren't sure about one word. I forgot what the word is, one Japanese word. And so they sent a secret message to Midway Island, and they told Midway to broadcast in the clear, no coding, no secret, broadcast in the clear that their water filtration plant was broken. And sure enough, the Japanese then sent a coded message, which we were able to decode, saying the code word for Midway was broken. So the Americans knew that the Japanese fleet was headed for Midway because that you used that same code word. And they assembled and big ambush. So William Seward played a major role and in American history, all because the Russians got in trouble in Crimea. Because Britain and France thought they were going to take over Europe. We don't study history that much anymore, but we really should, because you learn a lot about the future from studying that.
It keeps repeating itself. That's the
it does.
That's the thing. Yeah. Well, we're close to being out of time, but just really quickly on that point, I want to recommend a little bit. There was a film about the Charge of the Light Brigade. Now, if you've ever heard the poem "The Charge of the Light Brigade," it's about that Crimean campaign,
the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War,
the Battle of Balaclava, in which the British, for some reason, due to a series of really unfortunate miscommunications, sent the Light Brigade head on into the Russian cannons. Now, they could have actually ended the war almost that day had they not done that. And it turned into such a disaster that it prolonged things. The film actually is pretty good. It's very 1960s, early 1970s. I forget exactly what the Sir John Gielgud was in. I think it was the early 1970s. It's actually a pretty good movie. And it does give you a pretty good rundown of where the miscommunication happened, although I think it kind of plays games with why.
Well, I can tell you the fundamental miscommunication, and this is so classic miscommunication. There were two valleys that made a U shape.
Yep.
The Light Brigade was at the point. The British general was at the point, but up high. So he was looking at both valleys. The valley on his left was chock full of Russian artillery. The valley on his right had Russian artillery, but it had been abandoned. So he sent a message to the Light Brigade commander, attack to the right. But it was the general's right. And the right of the Light Brigade was straight into death. And so they charged in, and I think 100 of them were killed and the rest of them were wounded, and was a terrible, terrible defeat. And Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote a magnificent poem about it. I'm not a big poetry guy, but it was very eloquent.
It's actually my father's one who told me to learn that one. It was one of his favorite books.
Cannons to the left of us, cannons to the right. Yep.
Ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do and die. Into the Valley of Death rode the 600. Yeah. It's a brilliant poem. It's really moving. So
and I in the column I did put a link to the actual text of not the movie, but the actual text of the original poem.
Yeah, the movie's actually pretty interesting. I didn't actually see the movie until like 15, 20 years ago. And it's got great the actors in it. It's got great British actors in it.
Are there any other kind? Yeah.
Well, I've seen a few lousy British films too, but that's not one of them. It's just it's a piece of its own time. It's not even a piece of the Crimean War time. It's a piece of its own time. It's very anti-war. Just really quickly while we're on this subject, one of my favorite films is Zulu, which manages to be anti-war but pro-troops at the same time. Yeah. It is such a brilliant film. It's like Patton. Patton is actually kind of the same way. It's anti-war, but
1964, and that was Michael Caine's breakout role.
It was indeed. I think it may have even been his first. Oh, it is so good.
I saw that in Memphis, and I loved it so much I went back and saw it again. And I've only done that twice. I did that for Zulu, and I did it for Gladiator.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's another good one to do it with. But yeah, Zulu, I loved that movie when I was a kid, and then I didn't watch it for a while. And it must have been just a few years ago that I realized I really hadn't seen that thing in maybe a couple of decades. And I thought, maybe I just, maybe it's because it was a favorite when I was a kid. I went back and watched it, and it was so moving. And it also tells the story. It's a true story. It's the Battle of Rorke's Drift, which took place right after, and it shows this in the movie, it took place right after the British Army got annihilated by trying to do a frontal assault on the Zulus. It's astounding. The only thing that they got wrong in the movie was the character Hook, which they kind of converted into a malingerer who objected to war and didn't want to be there. And the real Hook was actually a pretty brave guy who wanted to serve in the army, and his family was furious. His descendants were furious over the way that he was portrayed in the film, but it works. It's because he ends up being one of the bravest guys there. Even though, in the movie, he doesn't want to, he questions all of this and blah, blah, blah. But in the end, he steps up. And, the best part of that movie is when the Zulus are trying to reinstill the martial spirit after they've been bloodied over and over and over again on this frontal assault on this very defensible position that the British held. And they're singing. And the commander goes over and says, what do you think of that? What do you think of their chorus section? He says, they're a little light on the bass. And the guy takes the commander's hint and starts singing, men of, I can't think of the title of it, but it's this great moment where the British soldiers are singing this Welsh, kind of a national song for the Welsh, and it's a counterpoint to the Zulus singing Out Beyond Them, and it's a great moment. It's one of the great moments of war films. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in a war film. It's just a great moment. So I don't even know how we got on Zulu, but
so it's movie time. You're suggesting that Zulu was really a musical?
It was. It was a musical. Zulu was a musical. Well, it had one number. It had one number and one number only. Well, two numbers, because the Zulu war chants were all the way through this. Right. The thing is that it treated both sides respectfully, right? Yeah. The Zulus were not just, mindless savages. These guys knew what they were doing in war.
It's out of style now, Ed. We got to have good guys and bad guys really clear.
Yeah, I guess so.
What was your headline? Hitler saves the Jews, or what?
Yeah, worst Hitler ever. Worst Hitler ever. Trump saves the Jews. Yeah.
That's a classic.
Or no kings. Trump's not a king. Yeah.
Oh my God.
All right. Well, now that movie night's over, do you have any jokes for today?
I do not.
Well, I have two for you, and I guarantee you one of them you'll laugh at.
Okay.
All right. First joke, and both of these are from jokesoftheday.net. I love jokesoftheday.net. It's a great place to go to. So here's the first one. Brian proposes to Jill, right? And he talks to his father about it. His father says, look, when I first got married to your mother, the first thing I did was I took off my pants. I gave them to your mother and I told her to put them on, which she did. And of course, they were huge on her and she couldn't wear them. She couldn't walk around. And I said to her, of course, they're too big for you. I wear the pants in the family and I always will. And you have to get that settled with your new wife, Jill. So, of course, the wedding night comes around, and very first thing Brian does is takes off his pants and hands them to Jill and says, put those on. And she puts them on. Of course, they're way too big, and says, this is just a lesson for you. I wear the pants in this family and I always will. So she takes the pants off, and then she takes her panties off and hands them to Brian and says, you try those on. So he starts to try to get into them. He says, I can't get into these. They're too small. So I can't get into these at all. And she says, that's right. And if you don't change your attitude, you never will.
Oh, boy.
All right. And this one you might have heard before. I've actually heard a version of this before, but it's still a good joke. So there's this guy at a bar, and he's just sitting there looking at his drink. He's just staring at his drink. He's not drinking it. He's just staring at his drink. And he's like that for a half an hour. And finally, this big, huge truck driver guy is tired of looking at him over here and just having him stare at the drink. So he grabs the drink from the guy and drinks it down. And the man bursts into tears. And the guy feels bad. Truck driver kind of feels bad. And he says, well, I'm just joking around. I'm just trying to tease you. But look, I'll buy you another drink. I don't want to see you cry. And the guy goes, no, it's not that. It's not that. This is the worst day of my life. First, I fall asleep. I go in late to my office, and my boss fires me. I leave the building. I get out to my car, and I found out that it was stolen. The police said they can't do anything. I get a cab to return home. And when I leave it, I forget that my wallet's in there. I try to go back, and the cab driver goes away. So I go inside my house. And when I get there, I find my wife in bed with the gardener. I leave home and I come to this bar. And the guy says, "Yeah, man, that never is a bad day." He says, "Well, it gets worse." He says, "I'm sitting here trying to decide whether or not to put an end to my life, and you walk up and drink my poison."
Well, you got 2 laughs out of that, Ed. Oh, my goodness.
2 laughs. We got 2 laughs out of that. All right. Malcolm, of course, the prince of Twitter, at AH Malcolm, as well as the regent of redstate.com. Go to redstate.com, check out his columns there. Andrew, great conversation. We'll do this again next week.
Yeah, we will. That's good. We'll have to figure out some new movies. Thank you, Ed. Thanks, everybody. See you later.